My name is Tyler. I'm 33 years old, and for most of my life, Christmas wasn't about the presents or the overstuffed turkey. It was about one rare thing: peace. A kind of fragile truce that settled over my family like fresh snow covering up old arguments and bruised feelings, at least for a day or two. Growing up, our home in upstate New York became the unofficial gathering place. Every December, like clockwork, relatives poured in, some cheerful, some clearly dragging their feet. The walls echoed with overlapping conversations, laughter, and the occasional snarky comment disguised as a joke. But it was ours, messy, imperfect, and familiar. We weren't the kind of family that posted matching pajama pictures online. No curated social media feed, just dollar store wrapping paper, leftover stuffing reheated for the third time, and off-key carols blasted through aging speakers until someone knocked over a soda or tripped on the dog. Usually it was my cousin Trevor. Despite the chaos, or maybe because of it, I loved it. It grounded me. For those brief moments, it felt like everyone remembered how to be kind. We teased, we drank too much eggnog, and we fought over who had to do dishes. But we showed up. We were there. And I made it a priority to keep that tradition alive even after I moved across the state for work. No matter how busy I got, I always drove the 6 hours back to my parents' house in Albany to be part of it. Even when gas was expensive, even when I was swamped with end-of-year deadlines, I never missed a Christmas. To me, showing up wasn't optional, it was a promise. Maybe that's why what happened last year hit so hard. I didn't see it coming, not even a hint. I was already thinking about which ugly sweater to bring and which dessert I should make from scratch this time. I just started wrapping the presents I bought online, humming along to a Sinatra Christmas playlist when everything changed. And the worst part, it wasn't a dramatic fight. No doors slamming, no bitter words, just silence, a message, and the realization that somehow I'd been erased from the one thing I thought we all still believed in. This year, like every year before I started planning early, I wasn't trying to impress anyone, I just liked making things a little easier for everyone. I found joy in the small details, in knowing I'd picked out something thoughtful, something that said, "I know you, I see you." For Mom, I ordered a sleek new immersion blender. Hers had practically coughed smoke during Thanksgiving while she mashed sweet potatoes, muttering something about getting every last use out of it. I found the exact model she'd once circled in a Macy's catalog and had it shipped straight to their doorstep, gift wrapped. For my sister Madison, it was a pair of limited edition sneakers she'd mentioned in passing during a video call. Something trendy she planned to feature on her fashion vlog. They're impossible to get, she'd said, already assuming she wouldn't have them. But I had connections through work and they weren't impossible for me. And for Dad, well, that was always the easiest. A curated box of craft beer from a local brewery out west. He'd never admit it, but he loved discovering new labels and acting like a connoisseur when guests came over. I knew they'd be gone by the 26th. I didn't care about the cost. My tech consulting job had been kind to me. While I wasn't rich, I was stable, and stability meant I could support the people I cared about even from a distance. Living alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment in Rochester, I had no one else to spend it on. Over the years, that generosity had become a quiet rhythm. If my dad sent a vague message about falling short this month, I'd send a transfer before he finished the sentence. When Mom's car insurance lapsed unexpectedly, I covered it. Madison's streaming subscriptions on my card. Never discussed, never acknowledged, but always expected. And I was okay with that. I wasn't keeping score. This was family. You help without asking why. You support without needing thanks. So when the family group chat pinged on December 21st, I didn't think twice. I expected a funny meme from Trevor or a grocery list from Mom. Instead, I read, "Hey kids, we've decided to skip Christmas this year. Things are a bit tight and it just doesn't make sense to host everyone. Hope you understand. Love you all." That was it. No call, no attempt to reschedule, not even a hint of disappointment in the message, just a flat decision dropped like an afterthought. I stared at the screen waiting for a follow-up that never came. I replied simply, "Are you sure?" Madison responded with a thumbs up emoji. Then she changed the group chat photo to a stock image of a melting snowman. And just like that, the season that once meant everything unraveled into something I didn't recognize. I didn't argue, didn't plead or guilt trip. I just said, "Okay, got it." Then I put my phone face down and stared at the wall for a few minutes, unsure what I was supposed to feel. I mean, maybe they were really struggling this year. Maybe the bills had piled up and no one had the heart to say it out loud. Maybe they just needed a quiet holiday without the mess of preparation. I wanted to believe that. I really did. So I leaned into the idea of grace. I bought myself a few groceries, picked up a frozen lasagna, and told myself it'd be a reset year. No pressure, no travel, no pretending to enjoy dry turkey while dodging political rants from Uncle Barry. On Christmas Eve, I lit a pine-scented candle that my coworker had given me. I queued up Home Alone for the 15th time and tried to convince myself I wasn't lonely, just peaceful. I even arranged the small gifts I'd meant to bring home under my own tiny tree, as if it somehow mattered. I tried, God, I tried. Christmas morning came and went like any other day. I slept and FaceTimed a couple of friends who were out of state and scrolled through photos of other people's family gatherings on social media while trying not to feel envious. Around 8:00 p.m., just when I thought the day was nearly over, my phone buzzed with a notification. "Madison has gone live." I paused. For a second, I almost didn't click it. But some part of me still hoped it might be her doing something silly alone, maybe sipping wine in her room, missing the chaos like I did. Maybe she'd changed her mind. I tapped the screen and immediately my heart dropped. She was standing in our parents' living room, the one I knew like the back of my hand, the room I'd offered to help decorate just 2 weeks earlier. Except now it looked like something out of a department store ad. A 12-foot tree covered in gold ornaments stood glowing in the corner. Strings of lights crisscrossed the ceiling. Tinsel hung from every shelf. There was even a DJ booth set up near the fireplace. And the room packed. I counted at least 30 people. Cousins, neighbors, even Trevor red-faced and laughing already a few drinks in. People were dancing, clinking glasses, shouting over music. It wasn't just a casual get-together, it was a full-blown party. "Merry Christmas from the real crew," Madison shouted into the camera, laughing as she spun around, showing the whole scene. I froze. The half-eaten lasagna on my plate went cold. The candle flickered beside me unnoticed. It had never been about money. It had never been about cutting costs. It had been about cutting me out. I don't know how long I sat there staring at my phone screen. The video kept rolling, the music thumping through tinny speakers. Laughter, clinking glasses. Someone off camera yelled for another round of shots. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. I was something worse, stunned. That hollow quiet, kind of stunned when the pieces start falling into place, and you realize you've been made into a ghost in your own story. I watched until the stream ended. I watched until Madison's feed cut to black and my reflection stared back at me through the screen, alone in sweatpants next to a dying candle and a congealed dinner I suddenly had no appetite for. They didn't cancel Christmas, they just canceled me. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was a last-minute decision. Maybe someone else threw the party and my parents just let it happen. But none of those excuses held up when I remembered all the planning Madison had clearly done. The tree, the lights, the DJ booth, that wasn't thrown together. It was deliberate. And the message crystal clear. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone or scream into a pillow. I didn't even speak. I just sat there letting it sink in. The same way you stare at a parking ticket on your windshield, not surprised, just exhausted. The next morning, December 26th, I woke up to a message from my dad. "Hey, bud, could you send $3,600 by tomorrow? We're short on rent for the duplex. Appreciate it." No greeting, no Merry Christmas, no mention of the party. Just another ask. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just witnessed them laughing and drinking in a home I used to help decorate, surrounded by people who once pretended to be my family. I stared at the message. That was the moment I stopped giving them the benefit of the doubt. That was the moment I realized I'd become a line item in their lives, a safety net they assumed would never snap. I opened my banking app. Not to send the money this time was different. I pulled up every recurring payment I'd been covering. The rent on the second property Dad had moved into after downsizing. Madison's cell phone still tethered to my family plan. The Netflix account that half the family used. The electricity bill I'd been paying for since August when Mom casually mentioned their budget got tight. I didn't touch a thing at first, I just looked at it. Every transaction, every transfer, every quiet lifeline I'd extended thinking I was being kind. And then one by one, I began to shut them off. Not out of spite, out of clarity. This wasn't revenge, this was relief. I texted back. "Don't contact me again, I'm not your bank, I'm not your fool, I'm done." Then I blocked the number. Then I called each provider and untangled myself from their mess, like cutting fishing line off a bird that never knew it was tangled. For the first time in years, the silence that followed felt clean. And I wasn't done yet. By the time I finished canceling everything, it was just after 9 a.m. My apartment was quiet, no music, no TV, just the faint hum of the heater and the distant sound of snowplows on the street outside. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, watching the first wave roll in. 4 missed calls. Then 10. Then 23. By lunchtime, I was at 50. I didn't answer a single one, but I let the voicemails pile up. Most were hang-ups. A few were from unknown numbers. One was from my aunt saying, "Tyler, honey, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Call your mom, please." I listened to one message from my mother. Her voice trembled like she was holding back tears. "Please call us. There's more to the story. Just please talk to us." But she didn't deny it. She didn't explain. She didn't say, "We're sorry, just talk to us." I didn't respond. Because for the first time, I finally understood that their panic wasn't about losing me. It was about losing access to me. I wasn't the sun, I was the supply line. The next day, I got an email from Madison. The subject line was dramatic, "You're ruining everything." In the body, she wrote, "If this is about the party, it wasn't even a big deal. We didn't plan it, it just sort of happened. You're being so extra, and honestly, I don't even know what you want from us anymore." She still didn't get it. None of them did. They thought this was about one night, one party, one live stream. They had no idea it was about a decade, about the way I'd become invisible unless they needed a bailout, about the way thank you was always implied but never said, about the fact that the one time I asked for something, just presence, just honesty, I was written out. I didn't reply to Madison. Instead, I created a folder on my phone. I called it Evidence. I took screenshots of the party, of the messages, of the missed calls and guilt-tripping emails, not to post online, not to get revenge, but to remind myself later that this happened, that I wasn't imagining it. And I was done gaslighting myself into thinking I was overreacting. By New Year's Eve, the fallout had begun. Madison posted a cryptic Instagram story about family betrayal. My dad sent one more email, long, rambling, full of excuses and nothing close to accountability. "You've always been a little sensitive," he wrote. "We're in a tough spot, Tyler. We thought you'd be there like always." Then came the line that sealed it. "Family comes first." I read it twice and actually laughed out loud. Because no one forgets that line faster than the people who only say it when they need something. I thought that would be the end of it. After all, I'd said my piece. I'd withdrawn my support. I'd left them to their own devices literally. But dysfunction like debt doesn't disappear just because you stop paying attention to it. On the evening of January 2nd, I got a security alert from my bank. It flagged a suspicious login attempt from a familiar device, an old iPad. My stomach sank. 2 years ago, during a visit home, I'd brought that tablet to help my mom with online banking. I must have forgotten to sign out. I hadn't thought twice about it since until now. Someone had tried to access my bank account from that iPad 3 times. Each attempt had failed the password prompt. The report even listed the location Albany, New York, my parents' house. I didn't even hesitate. The next morning, I got in my car before sunrise and made the 3-hour drive across the state. I didn't text, I didn't call. I just drove windows up, no music, just the crunch of tires on frozen pavement. When I pulled up in front of their house, the Christmas decorations were still up. Faded lights drooped off the porch. A plastic reindeer lay tipped sideways on the lawn. The whole scene looked tired. I stood on the porch for a moment, letting the cold bite through my coat. Then I rang the bell. Once. No answer. I knocked harder this time. Eventually, the door creaked open. My father stood there in a hoodie that looked slept in, his face drawn and gray like he hadn't rested in days. He blinked at me. "Tyler." "Where's the iPad?" I asked. My voice was flat firm. He hesitated. "I don't know. I mean, maybe Madison." "Save it," I cut in. "Someone tried to log into my bank account from that device 3 times yesterday. I want it, now." He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and shuffled back inside. I followed him in, not because I wanted to be there, but because I needed to see it for myself. The aftermath. The living room was trashed, empty bottles on the counter, torn wrapping paper still shoved in corners, the glitter from confetti still embedded in the carpet. But the energy gone, drained. Whatever joy they faked for social media had vanished the moment the money stopped flowing. I spotted the iPad on the coffee table and picked it up. As I turned to leave, Madison came down the stairs. She looked pale, like she'd been crying for hours. "Tyler, wait. Can we just talk, please? 5 minutes." I stopped at the door, hand on the knob. I turned to face her, calm and cold. "I gave you 5 years," I said. "We're even." Then I walked out. No raised voices, no dramatic exit, just the quiet click of a door finally fully shut. I thought that walking out with the iPad would be the final act, the exit scene, but with people like them, it's never that simple. Cutting contact isn't an ending, they treat it like a challenge. The messages kept coming. Blocked numbers, unknown emails, anonymous voicemails. I ignored all of them. But one afternoon, I came home to a cream-colored envelope wedged in my door frame. No stamp, no return address. Just my name handwritten in cursive like someone was trying to look sincere. Inside was a 4-page letter from my mother. She'd written it in blue ink, every loop of her handwriting exaggerated like it would somehow soften the words. It opened with "I'm sorry, but not for what I thought." She didn't apologize for the party. She didn't mention the iPad. She apologized for how things looked, as if the problem had been the optics, not the betrayal. Midway through the second page, she admitted they didn't want to upset Madison by insisting I be invited. They knew I'd be hurt, she wrote, but they figured I'd understand eventually. Then came the sentence that froze me. "We just assumed you were used to being left out by now." That line. I stared at it until the letters blurred. That was the story I'd lived written in one sentence. They hadn't forgotten me. They had factored in my pain and considered it negligible. They'd built a family around me, not with me. I was the scaffolding, the support beam, necessary but never admired. And when I finally stopped holding the weight, everything crumbled and they blamed me for the mess. I folded the letter and tucked it in the back of a drawer I rarely opened. Next to the birthday cards I never received. Next to the photos where I stood off to the side. That night I got one more voicemail. This one was from my dad. His voice was calm, too calm, the way he sounded whenever he wanted control. "You've made your point," he said. "We get it. You're upset. You want to punish us. Well, congratulations. Your sister's embarrassed, your mom's not sleeping, and everyone's whispering." A pause. Then his voice dropped cold and sharp. "But don't fool yourself into thinking you're better than us. You're not. You're just bitter. You've always been bitter. And when this little phase ends, you'll come crawling back like you always do." He hung up. I didn't delete the voicemail. I saved it. Because that was the truth. Not the tears, not the letters, not the half-hearted apologies. That voice, that tone, that was who they really were when no one was watching. And for the first time, I stopped trying to convince myself they could change. They weren't mourning me, they were mourning the loss of their free labor, their scapegoat, their silent enabler. And I was done being any of those things. The day after I saved that voicemail, I opened a folder in my filing cabinet I hadn't touched in years. Inside were a few legal documents, including one that still had my grandfather's signature at the bottom. It was the deed to a small piece of land in the Catskills. Nothing fancy, just a patch of wooded hillside with an old shed and some wild raspberry bushes. My grandfather had owned it for decades. Before he passed, he'd told my dad he wanted it kept in the family. So naturally, the plan had always been for it to pass to Madison after me. Dad made that clear at every holiday dinner. Tradition, he'd say, we take care of our own. Except they hadn't, not when it mattered. And that land, it didn't feel like ours anymore. Not after everything. It felt like a ghost of something I no longer believed in. So I made a decision. I didn't sell it. I didn't keep it out of spite. I transferred the deed to a nonprofit that builds transitional housing for teens aging out of foster care. Kids who'd never had a family safety net to begin with. Kids who deserved more than I ever got. The director of the organization cried when I signed the papers. I didn't. I just felt clean. It wasn't revenge, it was release. That land had carried the weight of promises made by men who never intended to keep them. Now it would carry something better: shelter. hope, a place to begin again. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Madison. She'd called from a friend's number to bypass the block. "You're ruining everything," she snapped. "Do you even care what you've done to this family? You're being dramatic. I don't even know what you want anymore." She still didn't get it. I didn't want an apology. I wanted to not need one. I wanted peace, autonomy, a life where my worth wasn't measured in wire transfers and emotional tolerance. And with every signature, every severed tie, every unanswered call, I was finally building that life. On my terms. I could have left it there. The land was gone. The accounts were closed. My number was blocked on every phone that used to buzz with guilt-laced requests. But something still felt unfinished. Not for closure, not for drama. For clarity. For once, I wanted to put it all down in writing, not for them, but for me. A record, a line in ink they couldn't twist or walk back. So I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. The letter took me 3 hours. Every word mattered. Every sentence was deliberate. I printed 4 copies and signed each one in blue ink. Then I attached an itemized spreadsheet, every dollar I had ever sent, every bill I had ever paid, every emergency I had ever handled without complaint. The total $41,680. It wasn't about the money. It never had been, but I wanted them to see the truth in black and white. And this is what I wrote. To whom it may concern. You know who you are. This is not an apology. This is not a plea for reconciliation. This is a final notice. For years, I supported this family in silence. I gave freely, not just financially, but emotionally. I believed that helping meant loving, that giving meant belonging. I was wrong. What I gave became expected. What I tolerated became normal. And what I sacrificed was never seen as kindness, only obligation. I was not your son. I was your solution. I covered rent, medical bills, subscriptions, and groceries. I fielded emotional outbursts, cleaned up messes, and swallowed hurt for the sake of keeping the peace. In return, I was excluded, lied to, and discarded when I no longer fit your needs. I will not pretend anymore. Enclosed is a full summary of the financial support I provided. I do not expect repayment. Consider it a receipt for services rendered. Effective immediately, I am no longer a participant in this family's economy, emotional or otherwise. I will not respond to future requests. I will not attend future gatherings. I will not answer questions about why because you already know. Do not contact me unless it is to acknowledge this letter in full with accountability, not excuses. I have changed the locks on every door you used to slip through. I suggest you do the same for your own boundaries and your own hearts. Tyler. I mailed the letters certified, one to my parents, one to Madison, one to Aunt Colleen who always played the middleman, and one to myself to keep as a reminder. Days passed, no reply. Then on a gray Thursday morning, a single email landed in my inbox. Subject line, just one thing. It was from my mom. I read your letter. I don't agree with everything, but I get it now. I wish you'd said something sooner. Maybe we could have fixed it. I didn't reply, because we couldn't have fixed it. Not with words, not anymore. They'd made their choices over and over again. Now so had I. After the letter, after the silence, something inside me finally shifted. Not with a bang, but with space. The kind of space that fills up when noise is gone. When you stop waiting for the next guilt trip call. When you realize the absence isn't loneliness, it's relief. I found a new apartment in Buffalo. Bigger, brighter, 2 bedrooms even though I lived alone. The second one I turned into an art studio, just me, a canvas, and all the colors I never gave myself time to explore before. I started painting again. I hadn't touched a brush in years. I reconnected with friends from college, went to brunch on Sundays, took long walks by Lake Erie with no destination. I booked a solo trip to Portugal, no itinerary, just instinct. One Saturday morning, walking back from the farmer's market with fresh bread and a bag of oranges, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I let it ring. No voicemail, no follow-up message. I smiled. Because I didn't need to know who it was. I already knew. They were still reaching for the version of me that never said no. But that version, he was gone. What remained was someone better, not colder, just clear. I kept a folder in my desk drawer labeled Past. Inside were all the letters, the screenshots, the receipts. Proof not of who they were, but of who I used to be. A person who measured love by sacrifice, who accepted silence as affection, who believed that being needed was the same as being valued. I don't open that folder often, but I keep it, not out of spite, but as a boundary I built with my own hands. Some days I still hear my dad's voice in my head. You'll come crawling back. He was wrong. I didn't crawl back. I stood up. I walked forward. And I never looked back. Because peace doesn't always come wrapped in forgiveness. Sometimes it's just a quiet morning, a clean kitchen, a locked phone, and the soft hum of your own life finally on your terms.